Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Hello, welcome to the Content Magazine podcast. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host, and we are here in our sofa studio today with the museum director of the San Jose Quilts and
San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles.
San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles. Kris Jensen, he's the museum director since September
2023.
23, so that'll be coming up on 2 years.
2 years on this September, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for being with us today.
Yeah,
Sorry
of course.
I got the Museum of Quilts and Textiles name confused. I imagine that kind of...
It happens all the time.
It is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, yeah. Something we're working on.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So before we get into that, I mean, and, you know, I know it's always kind of said, and people are saying it's not your grandmother's, like, quilt museum. And I've said that for years. It's one of my favorite, actually, arts institutions and venues here in downtown on the SoFa district. And we can talk about that later. But I kind of want to just hear a little bit about you. I mean, who is Kris Jensen, and how did he end up as the museum director here? So where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up in San Jose. I'm a San Jose native. Grew up in West San Jose, Campbell area.
Okay.
You know, went to high school here. Went to San Jose State University.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of a local boy.
Yeah.
And spent most of my career doing work in the nonprofits. All my career doing work in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
Working mostly in food security issues.
Yeah. Okay. How did you even get into that then? Like, what kind of like led you into doing stuff with food security? I mean, it's a very specific kind of.
It is, yeah. I think part of it came from, you know, just growing up. I experienced some homelessness as a child, with my family, and experienced some food insecurity.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So that was kind of core to my heart.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I wanted to work on that as an adult. Just that felt like the right fit for me for a number of years.
Yeah. So, I mean, can we ask a little bit about that? I mean, like. So, what was it? Because you said you went to San Jose State. And,
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is that like, having experienced kind of like homelessness and food insecurities, and then being able to kind of, move up? I mean, it's a difficult road.
It is, yeah. The food insecurity, it wasn't a huge, time, but it was a very profound time.
Yeah, yeah.
As I was growing up, I was
like,
around,
what age were you?
Like 7 or 8.
7 or 8, yeah.
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 And it was very impactful.
Yeah.
And our family wasn't wealthy. I did school breakfast and school lunch.
Yeah.
For free at my elementary schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Until things stabilized in my family.
Yeah.
And then going to San Jose State, I was a political science major.
Okay.
And just I just wanted to impact the world somehow, and working in food security felt like the right fit for me.
Yeah. Was your family, I know, like you kind of say, like with the arts, like you kind of come from a family of makers and,
I do, yeah.
and stuff like that. But then as far as kind of like in more of the social justice, or was your family kind of involved in a little bit of that? Or what was kind of the impetus that got you going? I mean, other than your personal experience for...
Yeah. I grew up in a family of artists.
Yeah.
And, my mom died when I was really young.
Oh, okay.
And so growing up with my dad and kind of being exposed to a whole, different kind of people, everybody, came through our house, so there's a kind of a sense of, kind of right and wrong, a sense of acceptance, before, we had a lot of friends that were, LGBTQ, plus as a family. We had friends just all across the spectrum. So I was exposed to that growing up.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that, it kind of set me on early towards the social justice. I remember as a really young kid, being a big fan of Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
As I was probably 9 or 10, and kind of going down that route very early on. I was pretty precocious in my reading. I was reading, a lot of books about social justice issues when I was young. Yeah. Kind of geeking out on that pretty early.
Social justice geek.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
And that just followed me, through into high school. One of the things my friends from high school really always teased me about is a club I founded, which was Students for International Peace and Mutual Understanding.
Wow, that's incredible. In high school,
in high school, otherwise known as SIPMU.
Yeah, SIPMU. Did you have T-shirts and everything?
I don't think we did T-shirts, but I think we had some buttons and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you organized that group. You got it. Yeah. What was kind of like the mission of that kind of?
I mean, it was during. I mean, we're like during the Cold War.
Yeah.
You know, during kind of all the stuff happening. You know, under Reagan. You know, with Gorbachev and all of that stuff, and kind of that fear of nuclear annihilation that those of us of a certain age grew up with.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know, and that was kind of an existential crisis. So it kind of came out of that, saying, "Hey, you know, we're young. We want to live. Past 1990, and." You know, we don't want to see a nuclear war happen. Yeah. So that was kind of the impetus for that, and just finding friends in school that would kind of support that. And we didn't do a lot. We wrote a lot of letters, and
that's good. Yeah.
Public speaking, things like that.
So would you say that Reagan saying Gorbachev tear down this wall, was that directly of your high school group? Do you think?
No.
No. Possibly.
Yeah, I think that happened like after. I don't remember what year that was. But I think it happened after we started.
Tear down the wall. Yeah. That's cool. All right. So the social justice thing was just there, kind of like cool. And then, for the last, before you came to the Museum of Quilts and Textiles, what were some different organizations that you worked with? Because you did some stuff with definitely like permaculture and
certainly, yeah.
So what were some of those?
Yeah, so I worked at the food bank in Oakland, the Alameda County Community Food Bank for several years. Yeah, and that's what really kind of got me into like food justice, really understanding what that means. Yeah, and understanding how like food banks work, how food pantries work, and how our system is really messed up for the fact that we even need to have food banks in this country. Yeah. When we throw out so much food and there's so much abundance, but people don't have access to that abundance. Yeah. And there's all kinds of reasons behind that. And we, the food bank there was very progressive. It was one of the first food banks to like stop distributing things like, soda. Because that
the health
is a huge contributor. Diabetes and. Obesity and all of those things. Yeah. So it was fun, being there for that. Then after that, I kind of hopped around a few different places, was trying a couple different things, and then ended up running a group in East Palo Alto called Collective Roots. Okay. Where we were, a very permaculture focused organization. Very, trying to teach people how to grow their own food. And not only us, but like tapping into the community, because so many of these people have had agricultural backgrounds.
Right, yeah. Totally.
And like say, hey, you can teach these classes better than we can. So let's try to do that. Yeah. We had a farmer's market that was attached to the local health clinic. Yeah. And working to get like prescriptions for people to get, food at the farmer's market. So it was a blast working there.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then do a bunch of like some family issues. I decided to start doing consulting, just to have more flexibility in my schedule. Yeah. So I was doing consulting for a number of years, working on some projects with San Mateo County to build a 5-acre permaculture garden for kids in juvenile detention. Yeah. And was working with like an environmental group in Los Altos and some other groups. Yeah. Yeah. And then once those family issues were kind of settled, and I had, I wanted to get back to work with like a regular job,
is kind of like doing those, well, because you're saying regular job in the sense that because you were consulting, so it was kind of like
right, I was
up and down seasonal. It rains, it pours, it droughts.
Exactly, yeah. And just I was tired of working from home and tired of working at coffee shops. And,
sure, yeah.
I wanted to have colleagues I would see every day and have an office
community,
to go to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
And I just wanted to do something different. I'm just getting older, and just wanted to try something different. And I saw the posting for the museum job. Yeah. And they were looking for somebody that had my experience in management and fundraising. Yeah. All those kinds of things. And I just said, hey, why not? Yeah. Throw my name in the mix and see what happens. And they, brought me in for interviews, and apparently they liked me.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think they still do.
So before we get to that, I mean, that's a good segue, but I'm actually going to deviate back because I'm kind of curious. I mean, having worked with, I guess with food insecurity and stuff like that, I'm very like, what is the remedy?
I think the remedy goes to making sure people have access to jobs.
Yeah, okay.
Because so much of it, is is related to people's financial situation.
Yeah.
And they also oftentimes, food security is in, what we call food deserts, places where they don't have access to healthy, affordable food.
Yeah.
And people have to take a bus to get to a grocery store.
Yeah.
There's nothing like local. So it's a combination of things, but I think one of the main things is that people need to be, paid a living wage.
Yeah. Yeah.
They need to, be able to afford rent and food, with whatever job they're working.
Yeah.
And in the Bay Area, certainly, even though we have a higher minimum wage in most places, it's still not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you factor in, childcare and all of those things.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-pronged issue, and there's so many things connected to it.
Yeah.
But there's not a willingness of, the government per se to address that issue.
Yeah. And I would say even the citizens.
Yeah, even the citizens.
Right? Because, that's the tough thing. It's kind of depressing.
It is depressing, and it's depressing what's going on now with all these programs being eliminated. It's going to cause a lot more issues, and we don't, the nonprofit sector doesn't have the resources to address that.
Yeah.
And I don't think they should necessarily. I mean, those issues should be addressed by, the government, we the people.
Yeah, policies. Yeah.
Yeah, through policy and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's a really complex issue, but it absolutely needs to be addressed. There's no reason people should be going hungry in the richest country in the world.
Right. I mean, it seems like it would be almost, if you were like a nationalist pride person, you would see something like that and think like, no, we're the best. We're America. We're not going to allow this to happen. We're going to have the best education. We're going to, you know what I mean? It seems like you would.
I would think so.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to work that way.
No, unfortunately.
But maybe it will. Maybe there's change coming somewhere down the road. Maybe the pendulum needs to swing, and
Yeah, it feels like there's some change coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your work in that area. I mean, that's pretty crucial, and I'm sure it's probably very rewarding to be able to see some things implemented and helping even individual families. So,
absolutely, yeah. It was definitely rewarding, and it was also really stressful.
Totally. Yeah. And you mainly were doing kind of like, you were in kind of a, I guess, a management, a director and fundraising kind of aspect too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And fundraising has always been a key part of what I've done.
Okay.
And found out that I was, relatively good at it, and able to, support organizations. So
how has that then experience of fundraising? How has that prepared you and set you up, and maybe give you kind of like a vision then for the Museum of Quilts and Textile?
Yeah, I mean, coming into it, I knew that the art sector is always woefully underfunded. Yeah. And in difficult times, that funding, even that limited funding, often goes away because people want to address things like hunger and housing, and which is, I understand, and appropriate, and I get that. Yeah. So, and right now under the current administration, there's so much of the arts funding is going away from the NEA and the NEH and IMLS, all those places. That stuff's going away, and that's impacting so many organizations. Yeah. Fortunately, my museum hasn't depended on that. Those resources.
Is it more based on endowments or
no?
Just
Unfortunately,
general giving.
General giving, grants and contracts. Yeah. The city of San Jose has a great program. Yeah. That we get funding from. So it's primarily those things. Yeah. In an ideal world, my goal would be to help build an endowment. Yeah. It would be to help get more donors. Yeah. But as I'm talking to our current donors right now, they're stressed about their investments. Yeah. They're stressed about what's going on in the country and where they should direct their money. Yeah. They want to direct more to us, but they just feel more obligated to direct it elsewhere. Yeah. And again, which I understand. Yeah. Yeah. I think all of us would probably do the same if we had the resources. Yeah. So that makes it a more of a difficult time, for an arts organization like the museum.
Yeah, yeah, it is a difficult. I mean, I understand the knee-jerk reaction is we need to get and agree with it in some ways. Education, housing, food. I mean, health. Those are very important. Yeah,
and absolutely.
Then safety, right? So then you have roads and infrastructure, and then you come to the arts. A lot of times it's seen as being extra down the road and like a luxury. What I'm sure you've probably done some stuff in just like the value of the arts. What have you kind of learned in the last 2 years, or even coming to this position of like the value of the arts in all that kind of ecosystem?
Well, I think the arts are critical. I mean, I remember something that Steve Jobs said once about when he was in college, he took like a calligraphy class. And that calligraphy class really informed what he did at Apple and with, the first Macintosh computer. And it was because of the arts. And the arts are critical. People need to have an understanding of the arts.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like art history and knowing all, the classic European artists, but just understanding how important arts are to our health. There have been multiple studies that have come out. And our souls, absolutely, yeah. There have been multiple studies coming out how important the arts are to community, and also just getting people active in expressing their own creativity.
Yeah.
That's one of our goals at the museum is to offer more and more classes in fiber arts.
Yeah.
Because you want to engage people in this. I mean, everybody has a creative side, but that side gets crushed, when we're in school.
Yeah.
You have to draw within the lines. You have to do this or that, and rather than giving people just a chance, just to be creative. Use that creative side of themselves because it is healthy for the soul.
Yeah.
For
For you, was there any particular art form? Because I think your dad worked. I think you said might have worked with metals. Your dad was recognized artist. I'm trying to.
Yeah, my dad was like.
I can't see my writing.
My dad was a folk artist.
Okay.
He made his living as an interior designer.
Oh, okay.
For most of his career.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of wood carving. He made most of the furniture we had in our house growing up.
Wow, that's cool.
All by hand.
Yeah.
It was my uncle that was more into like metal work.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My grandmother was actually a master weaver.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you grew up around that. Was there anything then that you did yourself, kind of like in those kind of like?
Yeah, I've done some woodworking.
Oh, okay.
I've built some furniture.
Yeah.
For myself, and I've done some carving and things like that. I want to do more of that.
Yeah.
It's just time. It's hard.
Yeah.
When I get home, I just want to crash.
Relax. Yeah. Okay. So now you're at the Museum of Quilts and Textile as the director, and so then what is some of those kind of strategies that you're thinking of that you brought from kind of like your previous what's some of the
I think
ways you're approaching it?
One of the strategies is what I just mentioned, is like bringing in that kind of the teaching aspect of teaching arts.
Okay. Yeah.
Tapping in, to the local community especially.
Yeah.
We have so many amazing artists that aren't recognized.
Yeah.
That could be teaching classes and, getting a fair wage for that.
Yeah.
And, and bringing people in that want to learn those skills, whether it's like knitting or crocheting or weaving, whatever, those are.
Yeah.
It's really to tap into that.
Yeah.
Because as we're a really niche museum,
Yeah.
Even within the country, there are only a handful of museums that focus on things like quilts and textiles.
Yeah.
And people have a preconceived notion of what a quilt is,
Right.
And
textiles.
and textiles.
As well. Yeah.
And it's very, it's stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And I get that because I had that same vision before I came to the museum.
Yeah.
But coming there and seeing kind of the insane artistry of some of these works, whether it's a quilt or a particular kind of textile, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And, that creativity needs to be, acknowledged and recognized. I mean, for many, many years, and even now, like textile arts have been seen as a woman's craft.
Yeah.
And not recognized as fine art.
Yeah.
But when you look at it and you look at the creativity in it, the craftsmanship, all of that, it's a fine art, just as much as do an oil painting,
Yeah. So then what you think is in terms of, I think traditionally, historically, actually, the museum here in San Jose, it's been pretty much a showcase place, right? I don't think they've had as much classes.
No, that's a relatively new thing for us.
Yeah. And it seems like that seems to be kind of like a trend in the arts too, like to almost like in theater to breaking the fourth wall, or like to be engaged and interactive and stuff like that. So that's kind of like one of the things that you're really bringing is kind of like bring people in to weave or to chop wood or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. I mean, the nature of people's relationships to museums is changing.
Yeah.
Especially since the pandemic.
Yeah.
So many people want to see everything online.
Yeah.
Most of our permanent collection people can search through. We do have it online.
Yeah.
But that's a very different experience than coming in and actually seeing the piece and being able to interact with it in some way.
Yeah.
But still, people aren't coming to museums like they once were.
Yeah.
So we can't depend on that.
Yeah.
And for us to survive, we need to look at doing other things.
Yeah.
And right now, the other thing is, kind of building up our class offerings.
Yeah.
Engaging with people that are getting them into the museum,
Yeah.
letting them see what's on exhibit,
Yeah.
getting them excited about fiber arts.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's going to really help the museum moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll continue to have our shows and exhibits.
Sure, yeah.
But we're doing this as an add-on that I think will help, underwrite, the cost of putting on an exhibit, because it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do remember, and I'm not sure if you started up again, and so I apologize. But you used to have the artists in residency, so I don't know if it was like every month or a quarter, but that was really an incredible way to go in, see the artists. Either they were doing dyes, or they were doing weaving or pattern, or all this different kind of materials, and creating in the space, and you can walk in and engage, and that was pretty good. So you think it's something along those lines, or?
That's on hiatus right now because we just don't have the funding for it. But we would like to get that up and running again.
Yeah.
Because it was a very good program.
Yeah.
I mean, our current board chair was one of our artists in residence.
Oh, okay.
I think it was our last artist in residence.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, it's another way to also engage with artists and, bring them into the fold. And but we hope to get that started up again soon.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, I really enjoyed that program. So, I don't know if this is just something that's built in within Quilts and Textiles art, or has been just an intentional, maybe that was it, mission. But there's always seems to be a social commentary. I mean, I know quilts have a history of being like a collective, even a community doing a present, giving a gift, making a statement. Is that more of has been a focus and continue to be a focus of the museum, or is that kind of like in the arts of Quilts and Textiles itself? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I think it's totally integrated. Yeah, both and it's totally integrated into certainly history of quilting.
Yeah.
There were quilts that had that were telling the story or the history. I mean, there's also things like Hmong story cloths, telling a story of their community.
Yeah.
I mean, textiles have a history of doing that, even with the clothing.
Right.
Clothing tells a story.
Yeah.
And we want to be a place where we can, tell those stories, share those stories, with whoever comes to the museum, because they're important stories to tell.
Yeah.
And there's a social justice aspect to most of those stories as well.
Yeah.
And we will continue, displaying, textiles and quilts that, express that.
Yeah. It is interesting because if you think more like, your thinking or general thinking is that if you look at even clothing and textiles and stuff like that, there is historically the patterns and the stitching and different kind of things that were put on the clothes were reflective of the community.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then that's seen kind of like as an old kind of craft. But if you think of it, like even if you just take something as crazy as like a branded T-shirt,
or
it's
the
like,
same thing.
Yeah, right. There's something that's like it's clothes and it's like making a statement and representing an image and those kind of things. Yeah, I think it's kind of fun. I just remember there was a show that they did about gun awareness that was incredible. And there was like, and you just see the different types of materials. They were using bullets. They were using fabric to put like the space of the fabric was based upon the number of people that had been shot in that area. And so the quilt was crazy. And then like Ryan Carrington, he's an artist who does stuff with chalk lines. He makes like a barbecue out of this wood and drills in and makes flags and uses tie material to make like these American flag type stuff. So that's the thing. It's not like what you think of quilt. Oh, it's a nice little comforter. Right. What's some of the exhibitions that are coming that you're like really kind of excited about and looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm really excited about our current exhibition that we're installing this week. It opens on June 6th. And we'll go through, I think, September 9th or something like that. It's a wonderful exhibition featuring this Japanese-American artist named Kei Sekamachi. She's 99 years old. She's not producing much art anymore, but she's still around, and we want to honor her with doing this exhibit. I think we've got about 40 pieces of hers that we're showing. And she's a master weaver herself. And she's done these amazing weavings, both 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional weavings. That will just blow your mind when you see them. I got to see some of them, early on. It was like, oh my gosh, this is just so incredible.
And what's kind of like the theme of her work and stuff like that?
I don't know if there's like a general theme. These are from a private collection. A guy named Forrest Merrill who has collected a lot of her pieces.
Okay.
And it's a selection of those pieces just to show the kind of the breadth of her work.
Yeah.
She started doing weaving in around like 1945 or so.
Okay.
She was interned in the Japanese internment camps.
Yeah.
And then when she came out of that, she decided to pursue a career in art.
Yeah.
So she went to like the Haystack School in Maine and, the California College of Arts and Crafts, when it was still called that.
Yeah.
And has just an amazing history, both, as a teacher and as like just an artist. Her pieces, people have them all over the world, and we're just really excited to be able to do feature her.
Yeah.
Who's, she's in Berkeley, so she's a local artist, and we just wanted to honor her work while she's still with us.
Yeah. You said she's 99.
99 years old. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I hope I make it that far.
Yeah, right. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how healthy you feel.
That's the health aspect.
Yeah. And then you mentioned before about Adam Savage.
Right.
That's kind of interesting. What's going on with that?
Yeah.
exhibition?
So when I came in, one of the thoughts I had is like, number one, we need to try to get a younger audience into the museum.
Yeah.
We want to honor kind of the older folks that have been with us for so long.
And the craft.
And the craft and the work that they've done. But we also want to honor like younger folks who are doing cosplay, which is an amazing way for them to express themselves, and express kind of their inner selves through the costumes that they make.
Yeah.
And the craftsmanship that goes into those costumes is insane.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen some of those costumes.
Yeah, my niece actually attends, and she makes these elaborate things. She makes like 3 different costumes for the weekend. She changes them, and she did this skull type thing, and like she's cool. done. Yeah. So all kinds of craft. Yeah.
And so, when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about Adam Savage, who does cosplay himself and is well known for the pieces that are pretty much exact replicas of the things that you'd have seen in movies and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him, asked him if he'd be interested, and he was super excited about it.
Yeah, that's cool. So when's that exhibition? When's that open?
So that's going to be next year. It's going to open in October of 2026.
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot of pre-exhibition activities with Adam.
Yeah.
So he actually came with us. It was a week or 2 ago.
Oh, cool.
He actually did a speaking engagement at the museum.
Cool.
We had a bunch of people show up, and he just talked about the importance of cosplay.
Yeah.
So we're excited about doing something a little bit different like that. I mean, we've done costume displays in the past, but nothing quite like this.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like we were talking about before, just about the garments and clothing and fashion and how that ties into cultural things. So cosplay is very much in. Like, I'm just thinking about, my niece and the beadwork she's done, the sewing, even like doing stuff out of styrofoam and cutting that, like, and then painting. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the level of multiple disciplines that you're doing in order to create those kind of costumes. And
the skill involved is just incredible. And we're excited. Adam's going to be teaching some classes for us.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Kind of leading up to it.
Yeah. Classes kind of like in like model making type things, or like
more like
sculpting type, or like
we're going to be focusing more on the textile aspect.
Yeah.
Of that. We'll get some folks in there to talk about like sewing and how you make a pattern.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Where to find those things, and then Adam can come in and talk more about the I forget what they call it, but the forming of the plastic into making like a stormtrooper costume.
The mold making and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that could be really fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And then the folks that use kind of that the foam like you were talking about.
Yeah,
that's moldable, and so we're gonna try to get a bunch of folks in there to kind of teach classes on that. And hopefully when we have our opening, we're going to encourage people to come in costume.
Yeah. Okay. Make a little fun celebration.
Yeah. Well, because why not?
When is that going to be? Do you have a date on
We do have a date for the opening. It's early October. I forget. I think it's the first Friday in October.
Yeah. Okay. And is that when there's a cosplay convention?
Unfortunately, no. We weren't able to
coordinate that.
make it work
sure.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a couple different, there's, the furries convention, then there's
Right.
a couple science fiction conventions downtown, but those are earlier in the year or like in the summertime.
Yeah.
But we figured October was good because it coincides with Halloween. And,
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
So then for you, what is something that has kind of surprised you? Because this is the first nonprofit arts organization.
Mm-hmm.
So coming from kind of like services and human services to art, what's something that's kind of like, oh, this is a different kind of thing?
Yeah, I thought there would be a lot of those, but I mean, I think people just in nonprofits in general are very collaborative. They certainly were, in the work I was doing previously.
Yeah.
And certainly here in San Jose, the folks are super collaborative, very supportive of one another. I have regular meetings with, various other directors about things, and we're all on board with each other, you know. And so that wasn't certainly a surprise. I think it's more the mechanics for me, of how a museum works.
Sure, yeah.
How, the complexity of getting an exhibit scheduled and set up, and all the ways that you have to do to take care of the pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a permanent collection of about 1,500 pieces, and they're on site. They're, in a, humidity and temperature controlled room.
Yeah.
And, one of the silly things I found out was like, you can't take like ink pens into the collections area.
Oh.
Because you don't want to like mistakenly like stain something. So you can only have pencils in there.
Oh, yeah.
So just like little things like that are kind of the surprises.
Yeah.
The mechanics of just running an organization, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah, sure.
Some of the sources of the funding is different, but running an organization is pretty much the same.
Yeah. What would you say for somebody who would be looking to maybe be in nonprofit, even arts leadership? What's some of the things that you say, like, you hone in on these skills? What would be something that you might give some advice for?
Yeah, I think like general is like be good at building relationships.
Yeah.
I think that's really core.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of folks, over my career just didn't necessarily have those skills.
Yeah.
And those are skills that we, would try to help people build.
Yeah.
Learning how to, be kind and caring to one another, and not like focusing on the competitive aspect of work, which is like so strong here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the core skills. I mean, in any nonprofit, knowing how to do fundraising, even at like one or two aspects of fundraising, I think is really key if you're wanting to like do a career, especially kind of in the management end of things.
Yeah.
And just go like check out museums, volunteer.
Yeah.
Get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Learn a certain aspect of it and find out what you like.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different aspects of a museum or a general arts, organization.
Yeah.
Just explore that, find out what motivates you.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, what motivates you? I mean, obviously, teaching and educating and changing the world, right? Yeah, but
I think for me, it's just I'm like a very relational person. I really love developing relationships, like with my donors and with my volunteers and with my staff. I mean, all of those things. I mean, that's what really motivates me in coming in. It's not necessarily, the textiles that we work with, although I've learned a ton about quilts and textiles that I would never have learned before, and I really enjoy learning. I'm a very curious person. But certainly for me, it's like the relationships.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the thing that makes even work and life like beautiful, right? Is the relationships. I mean, you can do projects anywhere, create things, make things, do widgets, whatever it could be. But having nice relationships is always it's the number one stress why people quit work, why people...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why, that's part of the reason why it's so important to me. And it's just, but it's also just part of how
who
it
you
was
are.
created.
Yeah. That's cool. That's good. That's a good way to have a default towards
absolutely.
being kind. That's a good thing.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, I had another question. So then kind of on the other side of it, what if there's some artists that are dabbling in kind of textile art? I think in general, just like textile art is kind of really. But with that, what was something like they wanted to have a exhibition or they wanted to display? What's some of the things that you might? Is there ways to access that here at this local level, or?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we're. I get calls every week. Several calls a week about artists wanting to display their work.
Yeah.
I mean, as a museum, we have to schedule 2 to 3 years out.
Yeah.
And we have a committee that kind of chooses what we want to do.
Yeah.
I think if we had more space, I mean, we're a very small museum.
Yeah.
If we had more space, I would love to be able to work with like local artists and like with San Jose State, that's just down the street.
Yeah.
And do displays of that art in a gallery.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we just don't have the space for that right now.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future we'll be able to expand and be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I always encourage people. It's like whoever they are is like write up like a 1-page proposal of what you want to do. Just simple 1-page proposal.
Yeah.
And send us in some photos of your work.
Yeah.
And I'll present it to our exhibitions committee.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might find a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
In that.
That's
and
cool.
sometimes people just need to work on their stuff a little bit more.
Totally.
And if they're open to that feedback, we're very happy to provide some of that feedback to folks.
Yeah.
On things. We've got some amazing artists that we work with that have been doing this as a career, and they know a lot. I think too, also just like find like an artist that you like and see if they can work with them.
Yeah.
Working artists always need help.
Yeah.
With their stuff,
Yeah.
And whether it's an internship or, just volunteering for free, or if you can afford that. I know not a lot of people can.
Yeah.
Find somebody that you like and just get to know them.
Yeah.
Reach out to them. Like when I was like, trying to get a hold of Adam Savage, I just found an email for his organization and sent an email cold.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works. You
Yeah.
can find somebody that you really like. Especially if there's a ton of fiber artists here that are just amazing, and I'm sure would just love to sit down and, learn.
Yeah, to be able to share that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. Is there anything, we always like to ask, anything that you're reading right now? Any like nonfiction or fiction that you're particularly reading in, or what do you like to read?
Yeah, no, I love reading, and, I mix it up between, novels and, nonfiction, and right now I'm just actually reading just like a really fun, goofy science fiction novel by John Scalzi. I don't know if you know him.
No, I'm not sure.
He just writes kind of just goofy novels.
Oh, yeah.
And I just felt like I needed something goofy right now.
Yeah.
Considering everything going on. But it's called When the Moon Hits Your Eye.
Okay.
And the premise of the story is that somehow the moon turns into cheese.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
They haven't explained why yet, but it just, it just turns to cheese, then like the ramifications of that on Earth, what that means.
Yeah.
So it's just silly, and it's a very light read.
Yeah.
And I'll probably do like a heavy read next time.
Yeah. Is there a certain book that you read, especially fiction, that kind of like was formative for you, or that you really enjoyed, or like, that was like, that shaped you or something?
Yeah, this is going to sound a little pretentious, but like the Brothers Karamazov.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Had a really big impact on me, when I was younger.
Yeah.
The Russian novels were always like, deep and impactful and covered a whole host of issues.
Yeah.
So, I would have to like say that one.
Yeah.
There's so many just different novels and books. I think my favorite author currently is Haruki Murakami.
Oh,
He's
okay.
a Japanese author.
Okay.
He's written a lot of amazing books. I think he's that kind of his most recent novel is the one that's next on my list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. We'll have to have it on the podcast after to explain that. Well, I want to hear why the moon turned to cheese, of course. So we'll have to touch base on that. Yeah, good. Well, cool. So you got some. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to release this, but June 6th begins the exhibition of
Kei Sekamachi.
And then coming in 2026 will be the Adam in October.
The Adam Savage show.
Or is that going to be October of, wait a minute.
October 2026.
26. So that's like
more than a year from now.
I can't even do that kind of math. Yeah, I lost all calculating years.
Yeah, it's a year and 4 months or something like that.
Okay, so that's good. Yeah,
and we'll have like exhibits between that as well. I mean,
Sure.
after the Kei Sekamachi show, we're doing a quilt exhibit. It's called Quilt National. So it's a competition of the nation's best quilters. So we'll have that.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're going to be working with a woman, Avery Truffleman. I don't know if you know that name. She used to work on the podcast 99% Invisible.
Oh, okay.
And she does a lot of work now, like in her own podcast about textiles and the history of clothing and stuff. So we're working with her. She's curating the show on sustainable fashion.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And they do the building is incredible. The facility is incredible, like with the entryway, And I had the privilege going before in the back into like the collection and seeing all the kind of stuff. And you know, from the outside, you don't expect that. But it's kind of like you have this smaller room that's kind of like across from the restrooms in that main hallway. And then the bigger kind of like
the three big galleries.
Yeah, three big galleries. Yeah, and then the little space in the back. I encourage everybody to go there. I even one time, like I was interviewed by this national type of thing, like, what's the best in San Jose? And I was like, you know, the Museum of Quilts and Textile.
Well,
it's
thank
like,
you very much.
It's going to surprise you because it's always, and more people that I've talked to because of, you know, First Friday they've been going to, and they're like always blown away, just like what's there. So
it's a little gem. I mean,
it really is. Yeah.
And it's been around 50 years, and you know, people don't realize that. I mean, I talk to friends and say, "Oh, what are you doing these days?" And you know, they're from the area, and they're
like, "What?" Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so we want to change that. We want people to hear about us and hear about the great things that are going on there.
Yeah. So before we close, then what for you would be success? Not so much for your position, but just you personally. Like, what would you say if you were, you know, looking back and you'd say, like, you know what, me as Kris Jensen, I did this, and I'm very proud of that. What would it be?
That's a good question. You know, the first thing that comes to mind is just that I was known as a kind and caring person. I think for me, that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Because that's like, I think, the biggest part of me.
Yeah.
I certainly have my moments when I'm driving or,
Sure.
you know, but overall, it's just, you know, people just remember me as somebody that was, that guy was, you know, he was a pretty kind guy, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be the impact I would want to make, is just being kind and caring to the people in my life.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's a really nice goal. I really like that.
Thanks.
I should try to implement that. I think I try to do the other way, just to be greedy and selfish. Anyway, thank you, Kris. I really appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're excited about the exhibitions and the stuff that's coming up for the quilts.
Yeah.
The Museum of Quilts and Textiles. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the South Bay creatives.